It's a record-breaking Mailbag Friday for us as we have to get to over 50 questions on today's show. Let's not waste any time and get into it next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned in to another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can catch me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering how this channel works, I will be bringing you episodes Monday through Friday, 30 minutes in length, as well as giving you 60-second YouTube shorts after the games, though sometimes on the weekend I'm not always able to get to them, but you can count on the Locked On Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo, and he comes to you live for about 15 to 20 minutes after all of the games as well. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. So, as I said, to open the show here, we got over 50 questions to get to, and I still might miss a few. But we're going to try to squeeze everything in here during this 30-minute episode. And if I miss anybody's question, do not hesitate to reach back out to me. You can direct message me. You can respond with your question again on this YouTube video, and I'll be sure to have it answered by the end of the weekend. Question number one begins with Daniel. What would you grade the trade deadline moves overall, and what % chance do you give the Royals to make the playoffs? I thought the Freddie Fermin deal gets an A-. I believe the Bailey Falter deal gets a B to B+. I believe that the Mike Yastrzemski deal gets a B to B+ as well, just because he's a rental. And if I want to include the Adam Frazier deal and the Randall Grichuk deal, I would give both of those B-. So overall, a B+ ish grade I would give the Royals on this trade deadline, which is still very much a positive. And as for the % I give them to make the postseason, it's still going to be an uphill battle because of the teams they're chasing. And they're 3.5 games back of a playoff spot, and they've got a really tough 9-game road trip now with the exclusion, I guess, of Minnesota because they got to go to Toronto and Boston first. That could decide a lot in this playoff race. So in my opinion, I'll still keep it around 20-ish%. They got to get over 500 and probably a few games over 500 before they can jump into that 30 to 40 range. Next question here is also coming from Daniel. When Jack is healthy, who do you think will start more often in the outfield? It seems like there's a bit of a logjam right now. I would imagine that you could put Jack Caglione at the DH spot a little bit more because Randall Grichuk and Mike Yastrzemski can platoon out there in right field. You also could move one of those guys to left field and play Jack in right field if you wanted to do that. But I believe since they don't have that definitive DH, you could probably DH Jack a little bit more. This one's from Dro. Love the deadline. JJ absolutely killed it. With that said, what's your new most ideal lineup currently? When Jack comes back, does Yaz move to left field? Also a non-baseball related question. Favorite sauce to dip nuggets in? For the nuggets, I would say barbecue or ranch, pretty even for me. And then as for the ideal lineup, against righties, Yastrzemski out there and right, Randall Grichuk on the bench. And then against lefties, Grichuk out there and right, and Yastrzemski on the bench. I don't really want either of those guys playing every single day just because they don't have the most favorable splits. Grichuk actually has been fine and pretty even this year, but over his career, he has been far better against lefties than righties. As for Yastrzemski, he has 112 OPS plus, I believe, against righties this year, but doesn't hit lefties at all. So I believe you can have a traditional platoon out there and right. But also, I mean, Randall Grichuk can play against righties, and I'm sure there will be lineups that have both Yastrzemski and Grichuk in it until Jack Caglione gets back. And then you might see Cags out there as well in right, and as we just said, at the DH spot as well. But an ideal lineup, I got Perez behind the plate, Garcia at third, Bobby at short, Indy at second, Vinny at first, Cags DHing. I got Yastrzemski in right, Isbell in center. And then I would say Grichuk or Lofton in left. because I just would still like to have a closer to league average bat and left. And if that meant Grichuk playing more against righties than Rave or Lofton, I'm fine with that as well. This one is coming from JHB with the addition of Bergert, Kolick, and Falter, who could be in the 2026 rotation. Where does that leave Bubic and Reagans? Will these two have surgery on shoulders and miss next season? No, both of them should be just fine for next season, assuming it's 2 thumbs up for the offseason training program. I would say that they're going to have Cole Reagans, they're going to have Lugo, Waka, Bubic, and Cameron, and then you're going to have maybe Bailey Falter as your 6th guy, and then Kolick and Berger could be out of the bullpen for the time being. That can always change because, again, injuries happen in the offseason and injuries happen in spring training. But Chris Bubic should be able to make a full recovery, and Cole Reagans might even return this season. This one is from Jeff. With the Guardians selling, does the wild card boil down to the Rangers, Seattle, and Royals? How many games should they win on this road trip to be considered a success? I believe you throw Boston in that conversation because Boston didn't do much at the deadline, and they're bound to have some regression because of not having Rafael Devers, though he has struggled in San Francisco. Still a big bat not to have out there. And I thought they were going to be far more aggressive at the deadline than they were. Seattle, I believe, is going to grab a spot. So that does make things a little bit tougher. But I would say the Royals, Rangers, and Boston are probably those 3 teams that can fight it out until the bitter end. And as for the road trip, go 5-4. Get back to 500, and I can consider that a success. This one's from Lauren. What is your lineup the rest of the way, and who stays on the main roster and who gets sent down? Love the content, love the show. Appreciate the kind words coming from Lauren. I would say you keep the lineup the same. India leading off, Bobby in the 2-hole, Vinny 3rd, Salvi's 4th, though I do know they've had a little bit of a change to that. So Garcia actually would be 3rd, then Vinny's 4th, Salvi's 5th. 6-hole against righties, I want Yastrzemski. Against lefties, I want Grichuk. When Cags is back, I would like him to hit 7th, and then you have, who does that leave? Isbell, and then either Rave or Lofton out there in left field. Or you could also have, against righties, maybe Yastrzemski hitting in the 6-hole and then Grichuk hitting in the 7-hole. I believe that'd be a pretty ideal lineup moving forward. This one's from SPP. What do you project the 2026 opening day rotation to be? I'll just refer back to my previous answer. All the guys I just acquired, more so in the swing role. And if Reagans and Bubic are healthy, I got Reagans 1, Lugo 2, Waka 3, Bubic 4, and then Cameron the 5. Or, you could move Waka to the 5. It really doesn't matter. All of those guys can be pretty interchangeable for their spots in the rotation. This one's from Octavio. Are you concerned at all about another slump on the offense since we couldn't hit this last game? No, in the same way that when they were struggling and they'd have an outburst, I didn't go all in that the offense was going to be fixed. I don't believe the 1-0 game means that the offense is going to go back to slumping. In fact, there's more reason to buy into the offense getting better because they have more league average bats in it as of today. This one's from Chris. What should the realistic expectations be for the road trip? At least 5-4 or even 6-3. Minnesota having their fire sale does change a lot. If they get out of Toronto taking 2 of 3 and they can somehow take 2 of 3 against Boston, man, I mean, you talk about skyrocketing up the standings a little bit and setting yourself up for maybe even a sweep in Minnesota, which never seemed possible because of their record at Target Field. But that is a completely different Minnesota Twins team they'll be facing. And if they can take some momentum from Toronto to Boston, from Boston to Minnesota, I shouldn't say the expectation is 6-3. The expectation needs to be 5-4. But if you go 6-3 and you head back home with a 6-3 road trip on your longest road trip of the season, you got to be feeling pretty dang good coming back home for the Nationals. This one's from Bryce. Do we think 2 of the pitchers we acquired start this weekend and we save Lugo and Cameron for the Boston series? Now, I'm not sure if you saw Andy Rogers' report. It will be Cameron starting on Saturday. So Waka goes game 1, Cameron goes game 2, Lugo goes game 3. And then I imagine 2 of the guys, my pick would be Falter and then Bergert will start in Boston. They both pitched on Tuesday, actually. So one of them could get an extra day of rest. I'd imagine, though, Falter would be the first one to go because he's got a little bit more starting experience this year than Bergert does, and then Bergert could throw on Tuesday at Fenway Park. This one's from Joshua, also again asking for the road trip. What do they have to go to stay in the wild card race? I mean, to stay in it and not so much what we should expect and what you hope for, you can't go worse than 4-5. I mean, if you go 4-5, it does depend on what happens to the other teams. Man, you got to take 2 of 3 from Boston, though. That's the most important series on the road trip. And if you can just hover around 500, you can live with it. But that means you really have to have a good homestand against the Nationals and the White Sox. This one is from Richard. Anyone released or sent down to make room for the new guys? We're going to get the official word later on today, certainly before they put the lineup out there. But the roster's already at 25 because Fermin was dealt and no other big league player was dealt in those trades yesterday. So Yastrzemski, when he's activated, will put the roster at 26. It sounds like Kolek is going to start in Omaha, though that could also be an error on the roster page. But if it's just Falter and it is Berger that are coming to Kansas City, then I would imagine Thomas Hatch is being removed from the roster. And then it comes down to Bolin and Sam Long. And I'd probably lean more toward Bolin so they could have a righty just switched out with a righty. And they can keep an extra lefty in the bullpen for the Toronto series and the Boston series with Sam Long. But when Kolek's ready, that might be the end of the road then for Sam Long. Or when Daniel Lynch is ready, that also might be the end for Sam Long. Let's take our first break of the show. When we come back, still a lot of questions to get to next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple, and prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Next question is coming from Brett. Who would you be willing to give up for Quan? Well, I just believe going back to the deadline and leading up to 5 p.m., that asking price was absolutely absurd. And they certainly were not going to trade him in division to the Royals. That just was never, ever, ever going to happen. If they were going to trade Quan, it was going to be to the number one farm system in baseball, or at least the team with the number one farm system, and they get 3 top prospects in that deal. I just did not see a world in which the Royals were going to get him. It's not to say they didn't try. I'm actually not sure on that. But that asking price was way, way above what the Royals even had to offer. This one is coming from Chief Lee Royal. Do you think that Reagans will be healthy enough to return to form this season, or do you think with the new starting pitching additions, the Royals would prefer to shut him down the rest of the year and avoid risking injury? It's a fair question, and I believe that's why they got another pitcher in Bailey Falter right after they got Berger and then Kolek. This allows you to play it a little bit more safe. Unless he is 100% full go, can't re-aggravate the strain in his rotator cuff, then you can send it back out there. But if there's even a slight doubt and he's not 100% and there's no risk of further injury, I just say shut him down the rest of the year, especially if 2 of these guys in the rotation are pitching very well. It's not to say you wouldn't want Reagans back, but you need to play the long game with that, and now they've got the depth to do so. This one's coming from John. Is MJ going back to Omaha, or will they DFA him? They don't need to make a decision until Nick Lofton would be activated. That could be today. He was eligible to come off the concussion list on Wednesday. When he's activated, my guess would MJ would be going back down to Omaha, though I'm not sure if he still has options remaining. If he was DFA'd, I'd imagine he's going to clear waivers because there's just not a lot of upside, in my opinion. If he was a little bit younger, maybe, but the numbers have been just absolutely putrid this year. From Royals Rundown, after this year, what do you do with the starting rotation? Lorenzen has to go. Do you trade Bubic or Reagans or move one of the guys to the bullpen? You could entertain trading Chris Bubic just because he'll have 1 extra year of control. He'll be coming up on a contract year. But I'd imagine they want to keep Bubic around. They want to have that depth because they know starting pitching is their absolute strength and the key for them making a deep postseason run. You don't need to trade any of those guys. I mean, in 2024 and 2025, the Royals ran into an issue where they didn't have much starting pitching depth once somebody went down. Now they do. You can keep all of those guys in the bullpen. You can run with a 6-man rotation like Detroit did. There's a lot of possibilities there, but I don't believe you need to trade anybody. Nate's question, out of the 3 pitchers acquired today, who do you think will make the biggest impact for the rest of the season? Upside-wise, Berger. Likelihood, I would say Falter. Falter was working with Brian Sweeney when he was in the Phillies organization. Really consistent numbers this year, and I believe his stuff might be able to play up a little bit. Where Berger, he's got the upside. He's certainly got the movement. I'd be concerned about working deeper into games and the walk rate. Kolek has maybe the highest floor of the group. He's kind of hand-in-hand with Falter, but I believe the Royals can really do some special stuff with Bailey Falter, so I'll pick him for the time being. This one comes from Luke. Pretty simple. Are they going to the playoffs? Right now, I believe they're going to be in it all the way up until September, but I'm not sure at 3.5 games back I can lock in they're going to make it. Things are going to be interesting, though. I will say that, and I believe I've held pretty true to that opinion now for about the last month to month and a half. Kevin's question, now with Freddie gone, does Salvi need to pick up more shifts at catcher? It seemed like the more we saw Freddie, the better Salvi was hitting. I would say it's probably going to be more Luke Mailey. They're not going to overwork Salvi behind the plate. They would like to DH him still the same amount as they were DHing Freddie, and Mailey's good defensively behind the plate. So I don't believe you're going to be asking Salvador Perez to catch every single game the rest of the way. He'll still be DHing. He'll still have games where he's playing first base. I would just count on more Luke Mailey than we've seen so far this year. This one's from Parker. Simple question, but you see the trade deadline pushing this team into the playoffs. Keep up the good work, both you and Chance. If the Royals do make the playoffs, I'll try to have a different spin here. If they do make it, it absolutely will be because of these moves. Because the starting pitching got more depth, and the league average bats could be the difference in keeping this lineup more consistent than they have been all season long. So where I've said before, it comes down to Bobby, it comes down to Cags being a league average bat. If they make the postseason, it will 100% be because of the trade deadline acquisitions. This one is from Coke Reagan's, interested in seeing what Q does with the new outfield additions and wonder if this will relegate Lofton to a pure bench role. I envision Yaz, Izzy, Grichuk, and Cags being the starters for the foreseeable future. What's your take? I would say that is the right take. Nick Lofton can be that super utility bench guy, kind of alongside Adam Frazier. But Lofton, if you can picture this, he just will be the Garrett Hampson on the team. Frazier last year was the utility guy, and if there was a righty on the mound, he would be out there, maybe playing second or right field. And for Lofton, if there's a lefty, maybe he does squeak into the lineup. But now with the addition of Yaz and Grichuk and Cags coming back soon, hopefully, that does make it a little bit tougher for Lofton to get out there. This one's from Jesse. Do you see any of the Royals minor league catchers getting some work in the outfield? If they can't hit, does it hurt to see what other options we have? It's possible, but I'd imagine with where Carter Jensen is at, he's going to stay behind the plate. They don't need to rush him. Same thing for Blake Mitchell. Same thing for Ramon Ramirez. If both Mitchell and Jensen are in Omaha next year, somebody's going to have to start learning another position. And I would guess it'd be Carter Jensen because I've always thought Blake Mitchell's the better defensive catcher, but that's probably a question for another time. This one is coming from Jason, excluding Bergert and Fermin. Which player were you most excited about acquiring today, and which were you saddest about moving? Junior Marte would be the saddest about moving just because I believe he's got the highest upside of anybody they traded. And then most excited to see probably... Man, I've always been a big Mike Yastrzemski fan. Seen him play in person more than a few times. I really feel he can be a Royal favorite if this team does something special in the final 53 games here. But long-term, hard not to be excited about Berger and Stephen Kolek as well. This one's from Royals Chiefs. Which pitching prospect is your favorite, David Shields or Kendry Churio? Yeah, we talked about Kendry Churio the other night. Good debut in Columbia, but I can't go against David Shields and what he's doing. Doesn't turn 19 until September, has a 1.85 ERA in 12 starts for Low A Columbia. This kid might be an unbelievable prospect in about a year or two. Same thing to be said about Kendry Churio, and I'm not sure we've seen a international pitching prospect in the system like this since Jordano Ventura. To throw 96 at 17 years old, one of the youngest players to pitch in Low A in about 12 years, he's got tremendous upside, but David Shields, larger sample size from the left side, can really spin it. I'm pumped about what he can become over the next handful of years. This one is from Taoist Master. Favorite movie so far this summer? Actually, I haven't seen too many movies this summer. I am going to see Fantastic Four tonight, so if you've seen it, I would love to hear what you guys think on it. Man, I would say maybe let's go Happy Gilmore 2. It's not a high bar to clear, but it's on the top of my mind right now. I just saw it recently, so I'll pick that for the summer with the few movies I've seen over the last 2 months. Let's take our final break of the show. When we come back, we're going to go rapid fire with our last set of questions next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast. I want to tell you about Gameday Hue. Gameday Hue makes clean, no-logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. Right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GamedayHue.com. That's GamedayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GamedayHue.com with code MLB15. And I also got, a golf glove from Gameday Hue. And as I was talking about yesterday with how comfortable the hats are, so is the glove. And I'm not going to call myself a good golfer because I'm really not. But I do like to have comfort when I'm out there, whether it be the shoes, the hat, or the glove. It did improve my play a little bit just because I had better grip. But if you're looking to go and get some comfortable stuff to wear this summer, depending where you live in the humidity, can't recommend Gameday Hue enough. Let's get over to the question coming from Aiden. With Freddie being moved, does Carter Jensen get any run with the team in September, or is he a guy that will be on the opening day roster next year? I really don't believe you need to rush Carter Jensen at all. He's now hitting 240-ish in Omaha, so he's cooled off a bit. Take your time. I mean, you don't need to rush him. You've got a catcher in place. Salvi's going to be back next year is my guess. So maybe middle of next year is a better target date for Carter Jensen. This one's from Braden. Is Jack going to finish as a starter this season with all the outfield acquisitions? I would say yes. The good news is it takes pressure off him with Grichuk in there and Mike Yastrzemski. But when he's back, I still imagine he's going to be an everyday player. Jerry's question is, when the teams like the Twins trade away so many of their starters and pitchers, how hard do you think it is for the remaining players to come play baseball every day? I would think it would be hard, and I would be pissed off as a player. Yeah, I mean, there was a report, I'm blanking, Dan Hayes, I believe it is, said there was a source on the Twins that said, well, if they're going to sell off everybody, then why would you want to be here? I mean, the Twins really had a fire sale, and it would be hard. I mean, unless you were a rookie that's now getting everyday playing opportunities, it would be tough to go out there and lose all your friends that were on the team and know that the ownership just doesn't believe in you anymore. So, yeah, absolutely hard to go and play baseball after that, and it's not going to shock me if the Twins have a really bad final 53 games. This one is from Patrick. Where in Kaufman do you think the Freddie Fermin statue will be built? Maybe not statue-worthy, but I absolutely will honor Freddie Fermin in some way. That's one of my favorite players of all time, really, as a Royal. I'm not trying to hype him up too much, but I know he was so beloved by the fans and really, as a person, just so incredible to cover. And was always respectful, a hard worker, and somebody that you point to when, hard work can get you into really good spots in life. And Freddie Fermin was one of the hardest workers on the team. This one is coming from Chiefs Fever. With the offseason priority likely to be an outfield bat, who do you think is a realistic target? Free agency is thin outside of Tucker and Bellinger, so would likely need to be a trade to actually make a sizable impact. Yeah, unfortunately, I just don't have a perfect fit off the top of my head. But I would say that trade is always a better likelihood than overspending on a free agent. Because as we saw in the offseason last year, they're just not going to overspend for somebody if they really don't believe it's the right fit. They're not going to give in to a free agent that's trying to hold them hostage a little bit. So I would say that it would probably be a trade, and I just don't know who's available quite yet. This one's from Rude Dog. When can we expect Cags back, and how will the outfield look when he returns? I've already stated, not that it's your fault, I just don't want to repeat myself. I've already stated what I think the outfield will look like. As for his return, didn't seem like there was too much of a concern that it's going to be a lingering thing. Hamstrings can be tricky, and I want to say he went on the injured list. What was it? Game 1 of that series against Atlanta, wasn't it? So game 1, or maybe it was earlier in the week. He should be back in the next week or two would be my guess. This one's coming from Anthony. How did you get started in covering Royals baseball? And what inspired you to start pursuing your career? What is your end goal? Like, what position is your dream job to wear if you got the role? And you could be like, okay, I've made it. I've always been interested in sports, being an athlete myself. And once I knew I wasn't good enough to keep playing, I just wanted to transition into kind of this line of work. How I got into covering the Royals, I actually started as a writer for Royals Review. And then I ended up working at, and still am at, 810 WHB in Kansas City, a radio station. And then from that, also got this gig on Locked On Royals. So more coverage, more opportunities. I couldn't thank the people that helped me along the way enough. And end goal, I wouldn't say that I want to end up on ESPN or anything like that, because I really do enjoy doing this podcast and covering a team that I grew up watching and still do to this day. I'm a fan of. I've never really considered myself to be an expert in all sports and all teams out there, but working somewhere in baseball, I believe would be an end goal thing. Like if I had to throw a job out there, MLB Network would be great. But again, that's a long ways off. I really just enjoy doing what I do right now. Great question though, Anthony. This one is coming from Amber. Who's getting axed and why is it MJ and Blanco? Could be Blanco, but there's a lot of 40-man roster guys the Royals can take off and not really have to worry about. They DFA'd Joey Weimer to make space last night. Chris Bubich also taking out the 40-man, just getting moved from the 15-day to the 60-day. So there's more options out there they could, but it wouldn't surprise me if Blanco or MJ are some of those candidates. This one is coming from the Mizzler. Why do you think they're not playing Rave against lefties when he has an over 1,000 OPS against them in AAA this year and over 900 last year and only 12 at-bats, has a 357 OBP versus lefties in the majors? Maybe it's more the smaller sample size, 12 at-bats. They might think that over time, that's just not going to be a very favorable split. But, I would say that if there is another lefty out there, you can expect Grichuk to be in right. And if Lofton gets activated, they just like to have more righties out there than they do lefties when facing a lefty pitcher. So that would be my guess, is that when Matt Quatraro puts out a lineup against a lefty, you're just going to see all righties in there except for usually Vinny and then Kyle Isbell for the most part. But there's even times that Tolbert's been the center fielder over Kyle Isbell. This one's from David, who gets kicked off the 25. When if Cags comes back, him in right field, Yaz and Grichuk platoon in left. Would you agree that this team is inferior defensively from last year? Wouldn't say inferior, but a little bit worse just because they're playing some guys that are out of position. As for who goes off the 25-man, I think Kolek's going to start in AAA. So if you have Bergert and Falter and Yaz joining the roster, that would put it at 27. So you would need to take, right, or would that be 28? It'd be 28, excuse me. So you'd have to take Hatch off there. You'd have to take then, who else would that be? Jonathan Bolin probably, unless you wanted to take Sam Long off the roster, but I believe they want that extra lefty. This one's coming from, looks like, Ben, did MJ make the trip with the team or will he be the DFA tomorrow? That's the thing with the position players. They don't really need to make a move with MJ until Nick Lofton gets activated, which could be some point this week. This one is coming from N Slow-Mo Replay. Did the Royals do enough to make a wild card spot? I believe they did enough to give themselves a chance, just not sold yet. It'll be enough. They really got to be hot on this 9-game road trip. All right, if I missed anybody's question on Twitter, just again, respond when I post this a little bit later on in the afternoon. All right, we jump over to YouTube. This one's from Drew. My friend Noah's a huge Freddie Fermin fan. Do you think Kyle Isbell can fill the void in the clubhouse? Not really sure Kyle Isbell's the vocal guy in the clubhouse. He's more on the quieter side. But Vinny Pasquantino's that clubhouse guy. They really like Adam Frazier. Those pitchers kind of bring that steadiness, almost that wise experience. But I would say that a clear leader in that clubhouse is Vinny Pasquantino. And then, of course, a guy like Salvador Perez. Jordan's question: the Royals have 28 games left versus teams who are not playoff contenders and 25 against teams who are. What is the most realistic path to a playoff caliber record? What is your prediction for our record versus each of those groups? They play well against the sub 500 teams. So let's go in those 28 games, 18-10. And then against the playoff teams, 25 games. Let's go 14-11, maybe 13-12, one game over 500. Is that going to be enough? It'll be cutting it really close. I'll probably play it on the safer side and say 13-12. So overall, what would that give you? 31 wins over the final 53, 31-22. That'd be 8 games over 500 when it's all said and done. So it would be cutting it pretty close, but that'll be my pick there. This one's from Camaro. Sweep in Toronto, offense becomes top 20, or pitching gets the top 3 overall? Pitching, just because they still don't have Reagans out there, I won't say top 3. Offense becomes top 20. Certainly could be in the second half, but overall, I'll still say doubtful on that. And then sweep in Toronto, not going to go that far. Toronto's really, really good, so I'll just ask for 2 of 3. This one's from Braden. Awesome breakdown. Always love your insight. Thanks for the kind words. With the rotation for next year mostly being set before these moves and the control for Bergert, Kolek, and Falter, what do we expect from the back of the rotation in 2026? A battle, or do all 3 guys acquired go to the bullpen next year? Thanks as always. I could absolutely see competition, because do you want to make Chris Bubich a starter again, or is injury always going to be a concern with him? So there will be some healthy competition in spring training. There always seems to be when I go down there to surprise. This one's from Brett. Do you see a possibility that the excess amount of pitching acquired today opens up a possibility that a couple of guys in rotation are used as trade pieces to get a bat this offseason? Absolutely in the realm of possibility there. They've got, 8 guys that can start, and that might be too much when it's all said and done. And all of these guys just can't be starters or bullpen guys. Some of them are flat-out starters, like a Bailey Falter a little bit. And you could have the upside of Ryan Bergert. So if you wanted to get a big-time bat, you could absolutely dangle one of these guys in the offseason to get that bat you weren't able to acquire this past offseason. This one is coming from Morgan. 3-parter, what does the new lineup look like? What is the new rotation? And is Carter Jensen a possibility of being the backup catcher for the remainder of the year? As always, appreciate the time. I would say the rotation is going to have Cameron, Walker, Lugo. I'm going to go Falter and Bergert for the 5. When Reagans comes back, I'm going to say they're going to go a 6-man rotation there. I don't believe they're going to have Reagans throwing every 5th day. I'm going to believe that they want more rest and more depth for their final push to make it back to October. And then as for Carter Jensen, nope, I just think they're going to roll with Luke Mailey the rest of the year. This next one is coming from Coach RP. Can you address the moment when Evan Sisk failed to impress enough to be a factor in Kansas City? I'm having a hard time with losing Singer and now Evan Sisk. The reality with Sisk is he's a 28-year-old minor leaguer. He had good stuff, didn't throw enough strikes, and wasn't pitching that well in AAA before they dealt him. Funky angle, funky 3/4/submarine look, kind of a side armor, but just didn't throw enough strikes when it was all said and done. Elizabeth asks, Royals traded for Kyle Wright last year, and he hasn't thrown one pitch on the mound for Kansas City. I know he's been rehabbing, trying to come back. Do you think he will ever be on the mound for KC this year? I'm going to say no, just too many setbacks with too many different injuries. This one is coming from Wilson. Official record prediction after the trades. Well, I did just say 31-22, I believe, which would put them 8 games over 500, which would be 85-77. That puts you either in a playoff spot, the last spot, or 1 game under that. So I'll stick with that. 31-22 the rest of the way. Cole's question, do you like the Freddie trade, and does this Luke Mailey get more, or will this get Luke Mailey more playing time? Love the channel. Keep up the great work. And as always, thank you for the kind words. Mailey will get more playing time just because he works well with the pitchers. I thought pretty good behind the plate as well. And then as for the Freddie trade, I really do like it. To trade a backup 30-year-old catcher, as much as I loved him, you get 2 starters that Padres fans really didn't want to trade for multiple years of control. That's a pretty good deal for J.J. Piccolo. And the last two here, Jets question, do you ever see Bobby hitting anywhere other than second in a Royals uniform? I would imagine yes. At some point he'll hit third because I've always thought that could be his best spot. Your best hitter usually goes in the 3-hole, but he seems pretty comfortable in the 2-hole for the time being. And lastly, Grant's question, with how hot this offense has been lately, when do we start to hold the pitching staff accountable for being the reason we aren't on another 16 out of 18? Hard to take, forget the outfield and trade for arms. The reason I believe the pitching has struggled of late is that they're just not healthy. I mean, if they can, take these new pitchers and give some of these other guys some insurance, give them some depth, I believe they're going to start pitching better. But the reason they've struggled of late, you're asking a lot for 3 mainstays in the rotation, and then you were starting a 45-year-old Rich Hill and then a bullpen game every other 5th day. So I believe the depth is going to help them out. But yeah, if they start to struggle, can't always hold the offense accountable or blame the offense for stuff because they've been pretty well or been playing pretty well over the last month with the rotation. They have kind of fallen back down to earth a little bit. That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll be off this weekend, but we'll be back on Monday to recap the entire Toronto series and preview the upcoming series with the Boston Red Sox. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.